Hello there, people of the internet. It is very cold out here today here in Florida, but damn it, today's my day off. So today is the day that I'm making video content. This right here is the grip from a handgun that I shot way earlier on whenever the channel was still quite young. And this was like, I believe this was even before the car was over there. Me and my friend Busky, we brought this old handgun out over that way somewhere, and we shot it several times. I'll splice in some footage from that video, and that was definitely a fun video to make. And I cannot believe that I just found a piece to that handgun that we shot. It was literally just laying over there on top of the dirt and everything. That was a good memory. That was a very good memory. I think I'm gonna keep this as just like a little memento keepsake from the very beginnings of the channel here. Anyway, hello there, people of the internet, if I have not said that already. I decided to go ahead and make myself a top 5 military surplus rifles list for 2022. Right now, at the time of recording, this right here is my pick for the top 5 military surplus rifles that someone would get, you know, at this time. Down the road, who knows what's going to happen in 2022? Who knows if we're going to have another, like, massive shipment come in, or if something's going to, like, absolutely dramatically drop in price, or if somebody's going to start making something. I don't know. The beauty about time is that tomorrow, you never really know what's going to happen. You can predict, but you never really know what's going to happen. I have a couple of predictions, but I'm not going to get into that. So here at the start of 2022, if you are looking to get into military surplus rifles, this right here is a couple of really good options for you. First off, we're going to start off with basically any of your Swiss rifles. These right here have been imported into the country for a little while, but recently a pretty large shipment of them has been imported into the country, and they can be found pretty damn easily. This right here is a 9611, if memory serves me correctly, and you can tell that because of the way of the pistol grip. Normally on your 1911 Swiss rifles, the pistol grip is integrated directly into the stock, but on your 9611s, which are converted rifles into your 1911 pattern, the pistol grip is a secondary added piece, and you can very clearly see that. This Swiss rifle in particular has some trench art on it. On this side right here, you can see somebody has carved some kind of something into the stock on that end, and down over this way, I have no idea what it means, I have no idea what it is, but we have carvings in the stock, and that was one of the main things that made me decide to get this rifle. The biggest downside with these rifles, although they are very, very available and very nice, precision, clean, easy to use, accurate firing rifles, the ammunition for them can oftentimes be a little bit on the difficult side to find and a little bit on the expensive side to find. Not nearly as difficult or expensive as like the Japanese rifles, but definitely not quite as easy as say 223 or 7.62 by 39 or something like that. There's an old saying, they don't make them like they used to. And my God, this old school Swiss rifle right here really does feel like it was built like a tank. If you are looking to get into military surplus rifles and you want something genuinely unique, keep in mind that these Swiss rifles, or this pattern of Swiss rifle in particularly, not all of the Swiss rifles do this, just bear that in mind, but the Schmid-Reuben style and pattern of rifle, they actually do that, and this locks open on an empty magazine. What am I saying whenever, what am I referring to whenever I say they do that? Straight pull bolt handle, as opposed to having to manually turn the bolt. Schmid-Reuben design has a camming system integrated inside the bolt itself, which actually turns the bolts, unlocks and locks with just all you're having to do is pull it forward and rear, just like this. Anyone who's watching this, you probably already know exactly what I'm talking about here, but maybe there's somebody in the audience who is just absolutely mind blown at the fact that you can straight pull this rifle. There was the main reason why I bought this rifle right here. The trench art and being able to straight pull it. This is the only straight pull rifle I have, unless you're counting semi-automatics that malfunction. A lot of people think that straight pull rifles are a little sketchy. My friend and I were actually talking about this the other day, talking about how he just felt like it was less safe than bolts that you had to turn. And I had to explain to him the same exact mechanism is happening. The only difference is there's a camming system inside the bolt, as you pull it back, it unlocks the bolt versus you turning the bolt yourself. The bolt is still turning and locking into place, but there's just a built-in camming system that really dictates whether or not it locks into battery, so it is still very much a safe, stout, robust action. Now this 100-and-something-year-old rifle, let's see, this was built in, what, the 1880s, if memory serves? The magazine in it is a little on the not very strong side, but I caught a couple of 7.5 Swiss rounds right here. We're gonna go ahead and lob some of these downrange because, hey, why not? I wish I had a full magazine's worth, but this right here is just what I have. The long rifles here are definitely way more pleasurable to shoot than the carbines just because of the concussive blast that comes out the barrel. Way further away from your face and way less intense than what you would get out of rifles shooting the same caliber from a shorter barrel. Now I don't really have anything specific that I'm shooting at. I guess I'm just gonna go for the steel. I recently threw a front sight on this thing. I'm not 100% sure if it's zeroed, so this is kind of a way of me finding out if this rifle's actually on zero or not. Oh mama, oh yeah. She's zeroed right where she needs to be. We hit that steel right where I was aiming. I do not want to lose these brass cases because this ammunition, like I said, is hard to get your hands on, so I do reload. I need to get dies for it though. This is one of the few things that I don't actually have dies for, but let's send another round of 7.5 Swiss. Oh mama. Wow, this thing's actually pretty accurate. I stacked those rounds on top of each other. All right. This right here is our number 5 rifle. These right here are not uncommon to find, and the ammunition is unfortunately a little bit less common to find. I did say uncommon, I said less common. Little funny story, a buddy of mine had one of these growing up. Well, I say a buddy of mine, my father's buddy had one of these growing up, and he called it a Swiss Army rifle. And I just kind of, at that young age, I put it together that it was like a Swiss Army knife, and it was like a rifle that could do so many things. And I never really understood how it did it, but I was like, man, that rifle must be able to do absolutely anything. You know, Swiss Army knife, Swiss Army rifle. This rifle must have so many different features inside of it. It must be like a survivalist dream rifle. No, I was wrong. It's just a standard rifle. All right, number 4 on our list is one that I'm sure a lot of people are going to recognize. Any sort of the British Enfield series. Now, if you are into any sort of military collecting, you know that these right here are brought into the country basically by the absolute truckload. And they're not very expensive rifles. Unfortunately, the ammunition for them is quite difficult to find right now. We had a massive amount of these come into the country recently. And whenever a bunch of people buy a lot of rifles, those rifles are going to need ammunition. And as a result, the supply of .303 British ammunition didn't really change, but the demand went way up. And as a result, the price on them went way up. And whenever you can find .303 British ammunition, oftentimes it is quite expensive. Like we're talking $1.50 to $2 a round whenever you can get your hands on it. So this right here is a number 4 Mark I. This right here was referred to by Ian McCullum as a last-ditch rifle done by the British. Basically, a lot of things were simplified. The rear sight on this rifle is simplified. The barrel band, or not the barrel band, the receiver band back here, very simplified. No markings on it whatsoever. Bolts and finish markings, just everything is as crude as possible. Stamped sheet metal nose cap all the way up at the front. The protective sight wings are just basically sheet metal that's been bent over. This rifle was very, very much simplified during World War II. This is a 1943 production, so things were not really going all that well for the British during this time period, and they needed their rifles as simply and crudely made as possible, but still worked. Now, originally, the British were rocking these rifles right here. This right here is a World War I production, 1917, number 1 Mark III. This is the SMLE rifle. This right here is what I like to call the gentleman's rifle. This right here is a very, very special rifle to me. It just holds a lot of sentimental and historical value to me. This one right here I got from Royal Tiger Imports. It does unfortunately keyhole though, so shooting it is a waste of ammunition, but I got it to the point to where it does actually shoot, albeit it's not very accurate beyond like 25 yards or so. So keep that in mind if you ever decide to shoot this rifle for whatever reason. Now the finish on this rifle is basically completely gone, which is a calling card of RTI. The rifles that they had brought into the country are from Ethiopia, and Ethiopia is not very good about storing their guns properly, and they sat in warehouses for, you know, 80 to 100 years or so. And as a result, the rifles are definitely not in that good of shape. There are some really good finds in these piles of guns, but there are also some lemons. That's just what you get whenever you buy used military surplus. This number 1 Mark IV, or this number 4 Mark 1, I think I just had a mini stroke there. This number 4 Mark 1 is not an RTI buy. This right here was actually bought at my local gun store. It is a very accurate, comfortable, handy little rifle. They're a lot lighter than I originally thought that they would be. But although this one was bought before the massive importation of these rifles, this right here is still going to serve a really good example of what it is that you can get if you're wanting to get into military surplus rifles. At the start of the year 2022, wow, it's already 2022, my goodness. Just be prepared to spend a little bit of money on ammunition. However, the rifles themselves are not very expensive, and since there's so many of these out there, I can basically guarantee that once the massive amount of people who bought these rifles have all the ammo that they want, ammunition is going to become readily available for these once again. This right here makes a very solid number 4 pick just because of how numerous and how inexpensive these rifles are. You can pick up either of the rifles that I just showed you for less than $500 any day of the week. However, in many cases, you can pick up the number 4 Mark 1 especially. I gotta take this hat off before I do that. The number 4 Mark 1 especially for under $400, and many times the number 1 Mark 3 as well. Now, although the number 1 Mark 3 I have does keyhole, I guess that doesn't really matter because I can't get ammunition for it anyway, so it doesn't matter if it keyholes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot this right here. This is a 7.62 NATO number 1 Mark III. Got to remember my designations there. This right here is just an Ishapur rifle. Very similar to our original World War I production number 1 Mark III. But this number 1 Mark III is chambered in 7.62 NATO, which is an ammunition type that I can easily get my hands on. So this is what I'm going to be shooting. Now 7.62 NATO ammunition, unlike 303 British ammunition, is rimless cartridge. And as a result, this type of ammunition, this style of ammunition is far easier to load from a stripper clip than 303 British is. 303 British, especially from like those black clips that you load into a rifle, is quite difficult and uncomfortable to reload. Whereas, come on now, baby. I'm over here talking you up and you're giving me problems, although it is still way easier to load than 303. That actually wasn't that bad. Okay. I am going to say that this magazine, though, is very much not doing all that well, so we might have some magazine malfunctions. If this magazine malfunctions, it's not the fault of the rifle. The magazines on these particular Enfields are just known to not be that great. But I'm out here at the gun range. I have rifles and ammo. Let's send some lead. Every time I fire this rifle, this is chambered in the same thing that a lot of my Mausers are chambered in, like 308/7.62 NATO. But this is much heavier than my Mausers. And I'm used to my Mauser recoil because my Mausers are some of the things that I shoot on a regular basis. So whenever I shoot this far heavier rifle, just because it has way more wood on it than my Mausers do, and way more metal and way more everything, whenever I fire this heavier rifle, I'm expecting more recoil because it is the same ammunition, but the recoil is not nearly as bad as the Mausers are. Ooh, Nelly. Now we're firing. Come on, baby, get in there. Magazine malfunction. Now we're firing tracer ammunition, although we don't really have to worry about fires with where we're at. But it still is cool to see. Come on, baby. Still is cool to see how whenever I hit the target, normally whenever you're hitting painted steel, it just like leaves a little splotch in the paint. But you can see where the tracer round has burned the paint on the target. And I just think that's pretty cool. but occasionally, whenever we shoot the target, you'll like see a little red flash from the tracer compound burning off. I'm gonna shoot the ground, and we're gonna see if we see any smoke or flash or tracer compound coming up from the dirt. Nope, but that was still pretty cool to watch all that dirt go flying all over the place. This is surplus ammunition, so not all the tracer compound ignites. But I chose to shoot 7.62 NATO ammunition because, like I said, it is far cheaper and easier to get than 303. I have 303, but my God, 303 is expensive and, and very hard to get your hands on right now. But then again, you guys are all right. You guys are all right. I guess I'll send some 303 Brit downrange. I'll grab my number 4 Mark 1 right here. Launch a couple of 303 rounds because you guys are all right. Except for you. You need to leave. Originally, I wasn't planning on launching this ammo, but hey, why the hell not? I'm overhearing. I haven't shot this rifle in a minute, so shooting my number 4 Mark 1 here is probably one of my favorite rifles to shoot, just because I love the sights on it, and the feel of the trigger, and the feel of the rifle, and the feel of the ammunition, and the feel of the everything else on it. It is definitely a gentleman's rifle. Ah, God. And the action is so smooth. Back whenever the British were using these rifles and the SMLEs, the Germans had thought that the British had adopted semi-automatic rifles because these guys were able to run their bolt actions so ridiculously fast. If 303 ammo was more readily available, I would do a mad minute with this thing in a heartbeat. Oh my God. I love this rifle. All right, next rifle on the list. Not really relevant to the list, but I just find it interesting. My 303 casings and the 7.62 NATO casings each extracted to the same exact spot on the ground. That's interesting. Just one little tidbits of information I'll throw in there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, number 3 on our list. Number 3 on our list. If ammunition was more available for this, then by all means, this would absolutely be one of my favorite rifles. Well, this one in particular. But this is just the genre of rifle, your Carcano rifles. A lot of these right here have been imported into the country in the very recent times, and they are a lot of fun. They are very easy to shoot, very easy recoil. There's not a whole lot that can go wrong with the mechanical systems on them, with a few exceptions. There is one thing that I do want to point out. We have ourselves on the side of the bolt right here a little rail, and I've had on several occasions this rail, for some reason it likes to turn downward, and whenever that happens, the bolt does not close and you get yourself a malfunction, and then you just gotta pull that out and turn it back to where it's supposed to be and lock it back in place. Not really that big of a deal, but there's been several occasions where I'm running my Carcano and that right there has slowed me down. Just one of the downsides of the design of this rifle, but besides that, 6-round capacity, built-in in-block magazine that falls out, well, built-in in-block clip that falls out the bottom of the rifle right there. Hi guys, I see you. Anyone who's ever fired a 6.5 Carcano round knows just how light recoiling they are. Not a whole lot of concussive blast, even from a very short little carbine like this. And the amount of rifles that have been imported into the country means these rifles right here are not very expensive. As a matter of fact, these rifles right here, typically you can pick up a Carcano for around $200 to $300, depending on the model, the make, where it's from, the age, how collectible it is, whether or not it's been sporterized. There's a lot of sporterized Carcanos out there just because they're not very desirable of a rifle. But these rifles are very numerous, and if you're wanting to get into the military surplus market and you don't have a lot of money, this right here is a very good option because they're not overly expensive rifles. However, the ammunition is extremely hard to find and quite expensive whenever you do find it. The cheapest rounds I've been able to find is like $1.75 per shot if you buy in bulk. So yeah, you're going to be spending your money on this. Now, the Carcano's older brother, well, younger brother but larger, the 735 Carcano. This right here is kind of a really oddball cartridge. Same exact action, basically the same exact style of rifle, in-block clip, same exact bolt, the bolt head is the same, basically everything about the cartridge is the same except it fires a larger caliber cartridge downrange, and 735 is actually much harder to find than 6.5 Carcano. So if you decide to get yourself a 735 Carcano rifle, keep in mind that you are going to have more power in a very nice little compact package if you decide to go with a carbine version of the rifle. There are a few long-barreled 735 Carcanos out there, but the shorter length M38 style carbine is definitely going to be the way more predominant one that you're going to find. But these rifles right here are not very expensive. Basically, any of your Carcano rifles, for what it is that you're actually getting, is not very expensive. 735 Carcano ammunition is quite expensive, and it is extremely difficult to find. 6.5 Carcano, you can find it, but whenever you do find it, it's expensive. This stuff right here, if you're not rocking original Italian surplus ammunition from World War II, you're probably not going to find ammunition unless you hand load it yourself. So that is one of the biggest downsides of this rifle. Now, I actually do not have any ammunition for either of these, so instead of showing off the rifles by shooting them downrange, I'm going to have to splice in some footage of me running these rifles at one point or another in previous videos, because I have made videos on both of these rifles before, and I have put rounds through both of these rifles before, so I'm just going to end up having to splice in some footage. So this right here is a good number 3 pick just because of how absolutely inexpensive these rifles are and how readily available these rifles are. Like I said, they were imported en masse into the country not too terribly long ago, and they are very inexpensive. A lot of your big store, big box retailers are still selling these rifles off as surplus. So if you're looking to get it in the market and you don't have a lot of money at all, I recommend one of these, as long as you're not looking to actually shoot it. Because if you are looking to shoot it, then hey, you're going to need some money to go ahead and buy that ammunition. Alright, on to the next pick. Alright, next up on our list, I'm sure you guys definitely saw this coming on this list. Mosin Nagant. Anyone who has anything to do with military surplus collecting at least knows about these rifles. I imagine that basically everybody except for one guy I know in the comments, I imagine basically everybody has, you know, at least had one or currently has one, or at the bare minimum at least fired one of these rifles. Millions of these were made throughout their existence. We got them in the Goldilocks style of rifle, Goldilocks length. We got them in short rifles. This is definitely too short for my taste. We got them in the venerable long rifle, very girthy rifle. This one is definitely the heaviest rifle that I own out of all of the Mosins that I have. I have some pretty girthy Mosins. Ironic as it is, the M44 is actually heavier than the 9130 because of all this extra hardware up front, despite the fact that it's quite a deal shorter and way handier. But the Mosin Nagant, you used to be able to pick these rifles up for dirt cheap. I have a Mosin Nagant that I picked up for like 80 bucks way back in the day. And I shot that thing until it died, and it still shoots to this day, but it's not accurate at all, and the rounds tumble, and etc, etc. So I have this Mosin Nagant right here. This is a 9130. If you are going to collect military surplus and you're looking for a cheap, readily available Mosin Nagant, this right here is probably going to be your best option, because this right here is by far the most predominant Mosin Nagant. The 9130 model, though, like I said, short rifles do exist. The M44, these can be readily found very easily, but they're going to be more expensive than your 9130 just because they're a more desirable rifle. Then you have your long rifle, the 1891 pattern. These right here typically run quite expensive. I got this one at a pretty good deal. This right here is actually a Finnish rifle, Finnish refurbished 91 or 1891 pattern. This one in particular is missing the rear sight, but hey, I can still use it. So she does still fire, and she is fairly accurate for what it is without a rear sight. But although these are not near as cheap as they used to be, I still want to point out that they are an extraordinarily good option, because for the amount of money that you're spending on one of these rifles, they are exceptionally high quality rifles. They have exceptional accuracy. The ammunition is still readily available for them. We don't know if that's going to continue to be the case down the road, but as of time of recording this video, the ammunition is still very much readily available for them. You can pick them up for typically around $250 to $350, though many of these have been sporterized, and if you find yourself a sporterized Mosin Nagant, you can pick it up for $200 or below. So these are excellent way to get started in the firearms collecting market. The main reason why I have them at this position number 2 in the list, is just because of how unbelievably numerous these are. You cannot say that you cannot find a Mosin Nagant to buy. That's not something that you can say. There's many rifles out there that I can say, hey, I'm looking for this, but I just can't find one, so I can't buy one. You cannot say that for the Mosin. They're more expensive than they used to be, I'll give you that. But you can't say that you can't find them. They are absolutely all over the place, and they're wholeheartedly recognizable. Anyone who breaks out one of these, you know, anyone who knows anything about surplus firearms is immediately going to recognize it. So, Mosin Nagant, if you're looking to get started, the start of 2022, this right here is an excellent, excellent option. Now remember what I said about the ammunition being readily available and not overly expensive, typically around 50 cents a round, depending on whether or not you're buying in bulk and who you're buying from and what the market looks like. So I'm going to use my long rifle here because the concussive blast from the 54 rimmed is quite excessive when you shorten the barrel down. So I actually really like this long rifle here. The trigger on it absolutely sucks, but besides that, the Finns did a great job refurbishing this rifle. Now, just like many of your other military surplus rifles at the time, it does feed from a stripper clip. As you saw, I just pushed 5 rounds down into the magazine, and then you remove your clip. The rimmed cartridge is not that big of a deal because there is a magazine cutoff, magazine disconnect. Those aren't really the right terms, but there's a system that separates the cartridges so you don't have to suffer from rim lock like you do on your British rifles, because 54 rimmed is, of course, a rimmed cartridge. Okay. Now, like I had said, I do not have rear sights on this thing, so I just kind of spitball for the general area, and for the most part, I think I have the idea of where to aim this rifle now. That one was a little low. I saw concrete go flying all over the place. There we go. Now I got it. Considering the age of this rifle, I was unable to figure out when this rifle was actually made, but it is an 1891 pattern. So it was refurbished by the Finns in 1943. That was during the Continuation War. But since it's an 1891 pattern, odds are this was made sometime before 1930. So it's damn near close to 100 years old. But the Finnish refurbishment, my God, they did a really good job. The action of this rifle. This is probably the smoothest Mosin I have ever ran. Alright. You can't go wrong with one of these if you're wanting to get started in the military surplus market. I love bringing my Mosins out and using them just because of the available ammunition, and my goodness, I really hope that does not change. Let's have a look at my #1 pick for this list. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my #1 pick, if you decide to get into the military surplus market here in 2022 and you're looking to buy military surplus rifles, it is going to be the almighty Mauser. Now, let me go ahead and explain this a little bit. There's very, very desirable Mausers out there. This right here is a Car 98 German production, 1944 production Car 98. This one in particular is missing its butt pad. I do intend to go ahead and replace that down the road, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. This right here is a very desirable rifle. This is one that people go after very regularly. It is definitely a unique, interesting piece to have in any collection, and it is absolutely one that I am wholeheartedly happy that I have my hands on. But if you are looking to get into the military surplus collecting community, odds are you don't have a whole lot of money to get started. So why am I telling you about this high-end, rather expensive Mauser rifle? Normally a Car 98, you know, you're talking $800 to $1,200 worth of rifle right there whenever it's in good, shootable, working, usable condition. There's definitely some expensive Mausers out there that are only expensive just because of the history behind them. But there are a whole lot of these guns out there. Like, there are millions and millions and millions of these different Mauser rifles. The pattern of rifle is so popular that many of the rifles that we make nowadays are patterned after these old school Mausers. Since there are so many different varieties out there, there are so many different calibers available. Most of your the most popular ones are going to be 7 and 8 millimeter Mauser, but there's also like 7.65 and 7.62 NATO converted Mausers, and a plethora of other Mauser style rifles that shoot these things. But typically your 98 models and 93 models are going to shoot either 7.62 NATO if they're a converted rifle, or 7mm or 8mm Mauser. This right here is an example of a very inexpensive 93 pattern. This right here is a Spanish Oviedo Mauser. I picked this up for like $90 plus $25 shipping, if memory serves me correctly. It was not a lot of money. I did not spend a lot of money on this. This is chambered in 7.62 NATO, or 7.62 centimeter technically, but it can handle 7.62 NATO ammunition, and it is one of the rifles that I use regularly because 7.62 NATO is very easy, cheap, and common here in the United States, seeing as it is a military round that we use that is very readily and usually surplused. 93 action is not quite as strong as the 98 action that many of us are used to seeing whenever we think of a Mauser rifle, but it is strong enough. And Spanish rifles in general, especially your Spanish Mauser rifles, are very inexpensive, along with your Turkish Mauser rifles. I hear people wanting to see this old girl again. This old girl does keyhole. I am working on arranging a counter bore for the barrel so she doesn't keyhole. But this right here is a 98 action, very similar to what the Germans were doing. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that the Turkish made a lot of their rifles on German setups and parts and things like that. German tooling, that's what I'm trying to say. They made their rifles on German tooling. Very excellent, high quality rifles. If you get yourself one that hasn't been corroded from corrosive surplus ammunition, then you get yourself a rifle that's going to last you a very long time, assuming that you don't shoot corrosive surplus ammunition and don't clean the rifle. These rifles are exceptionally inexpensive for the quality of rifle it is that you're getting. Normally these ones right here can run anywhere from like $250 to $350, and like I said, you're getting yourself a very unique piece of history that not a lot of people really look at in the Mauser community, but it is one that will get you started on your military surplus collecting market for not a lot of money. And these are just a couple of examples, like your Czechoslovakia Mausers. This right here is a VZ24, if memory serves me correctly. This is probably my favorite 8mm Mauser that I've ever had the privilege of checking out and shooting and using. It is just such an unbelievable delight to run this thing. Obviously, this thing has been refurbished at one point or another because it is extra shiny. That greatly kills the collector's value whenever a gun has been refinished like this. But that doesn't mean that I don't absolutely love this rifle, and I am ashamed to say that this is not my rifle, and I do have to give this back. But my goodness, I'm gonna miss it. I've definitely had my fair share of fun with this rifle, though. I've put some rounds through it. The VZ24, along with like basically any rifle that is not from a First or Second World War, in terms of the Mauser rifles, basically all of your different countries out there that were not directly involved that made Mausers, their rifles are not quite as desirable, and so they're going to be not nearly as expensive. My nose cap is coming off of this one. I'll have to tighten that back down. But your Czechoslovakia Mausers, your Spanish Mausers, your Turkish Mausers, your Colombian Mausers, your Mexican Mausers, your African Mausers, your there's Mausers from all over the world that are not directly involved in the conflicts that people are wholeheartedly interested in. So they're not going to have near the collector's value. So they're going to be way easier to obtain and way cheaper to obtain than some of your higher end rifles like the German Kar 98, which is like the golden deluxe version of a Mauser rifle in terms of collectability. That is the pinnacle of what people are wanting to get their hands on. But because of the unbelievably vast amount of these rifles that are out there from a numerous amount of different countries, chambered in many, many different cartridges and calibers, and you can get yours customized and rigged up however it is that you're wanting, just because of the many different options that are out there in terms of these Mauser rifles, and the severely low price point that a lot of these rifles are at, especially if you're getting yourself one from a country that is not necessarily desirable in terms of rifle collectability, such as the Spanish rifles or the Colombian rifles, or etc., etc. These Turkish rifles are also not really high on the collector value, but people are starting to see that the Turkish rifles are at least usable, so keep that in mind. The prices on the Turkish rifles are starting to go up, so if you want to get yourself one of them, I recommend doing that right now. But your Mauser style of rifle, that is going to be my #1 pick for the top 5 surplus rifles to collect here in 2022. If you are looking to collect military surplus rifles, then by all means, whatever it is that you decide to go with, if you are looking for something specific, then by all means, you go ahead and you pick that something specific. But if you were like me whenever I was first starting and you had a very specific budget and you had a list of rifles and you didn't really know what to pick from, then these right here are some very good options if they're on your list. Go ahead and go check them out, see what you can hunt down, see if you can find them. They are out there and available. My goodness, I am feeling my back pocket, and I have a clip of ammunition. What is this? 7.62 NATO. Guess what? We're gonna burn some 7.62 NATO ammunition. This must be left over from my Enfield rifles that I was doing earlier today. Let's go ahead and grab our Spanish Oviedo Mauser here. This right here is probably one of my favorite rifles out of my collection to shoot, because it is so cheap to shoot and the ammunition is just so available, and it is very powerful, potent ammunition for the price that you're getting it at. And for a $90 rifle, at least I think it was $90. It might have been a little bit more, but it was not expensive at all. For the amount of money that I spent on this rifle, it was very, very much worth it. If you're looking to get into military surplus, get yourself a good Mauser rifle. If you want a military surplus collection, you're going to need some kind of Mauser rifle in that collection anyway. Otherwise, it's not a military surplus collection. Now, I am not the biggest fan of Mauser sights. A lot of your Mauser rifles from this time period, the Mauser sight, or the rear sights, the little V-notch in it, or U-notch or whatever it is, many of them are just too small, and blind people like me have a tough time seeing through those. All sorts of different aftermarket sights out there that you can throw into your Mauser, so not too terribly big of a deal, but if you're rocking factory Mauser sights, keep that in mind. A lot of them are quite on the minuscule size. I'm fairly certain that there's a dirty joke in there somewhere on how a lot of you guys out there, I'm sure, are used to dealing with minuscule sizes, but dirty jokes like that are beneath me. Wait a second, no they're not. God damn it. Welcome to the channel. Earlier, whenever I was talking about running 7.62 NATO ammunition through my Mausers versus that Enfield, this Mauser definitely kicks harder than that Enfield, but my God, is it a whole hell of a lot lighter. I could lug this thing around all day long, whereas if I were to lug around that Ishapore Enfield chambered in 7.62 NATO, I would have a way more difficult time traveling through the dense woods and brush that you see before you here in the state of Florida. I am definitely far more likely to bring this thing out into the field than I am that Ishapore rifle. Not only that, but that Ishapore rifle malfunctions due to the crappy magazine in it. Okay, well, let me know what you guys' thoughts are down below. I am certain that you guys are going to do that anyway. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Like the video. If you like the video, that helps out with the algorithm. Description down below has a link to all sorts of different goodies, including social media, email sign up, etc., etc. I can't quite remember everything that's down there, but go check it out. Thanks for watching, folks. You guys go off. Have a fantastic day. Real quick, I took off my jacket, threw on my GOA hat. Shout out to GOA and FPC. We need them right now more than we have ever needed them. So go ahead and go check them out as well. Give them some love and a tilt to your hat. All right, bye guys. Been a little while since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen. It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.